Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking your time out of your day today to join us. For those that I haven't met yet, I am Laura Jeffers, the Executive Secretary for the Lightning class. And this month we are featuring Fridays at 5 series. That's 5 p.m. Eastern. And this is your chance to get away from things and just think about lightning sailing. Recording of this webinar and all of the others we will be having are going to be available on the ILCA website. You can access those by clicking the Racing tab and then Articles and Videos. I'd also like to thank you for your continued support of the class. This year, membership and fleet dues are going to be very important to our annual budget. Memberships are good for 12 months, and I encourage you to renew on time. And if you are not a current member, I invite you to do so. You can log on to lightningclass.org and click on the membership tab and then the join section. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Southern Circuit Mentor Program. Since we missed out on this opportunity in March, Nick offered to bring a bit of the mentor program directly to you. For those that don't know Nick, he comes from an extensive background in the sailing industry. He has spent over 15 years as a sailmaker, working in all aspects. And this time and knowledge that he's gained has been invaluable to his career as a professional sailor and coach. His sailing resume is very impressive, with multiple world, North American, national, and midwinter championships in various classes. And in 2016, he started Turney Sailing Services to share his passion and knowledge with the sailing community. He wants to see each and every sailor achieve their goals while having fun and enjoying our great sport. And with that, I welcome Nick Turney.
Thanks, Laura, and welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Tonight we're going to focus on starting and what's involved in getting your boat off the starting line. We're going to talk about developing approach, executing your approach, and then later in the seminar we're going to talk about holding your lane as we exit the starting line. So when I'm talking about developing approach, when I'm on the water and looking at how I'm going to develop approach, I like to use the systematic starting strategy, where I'm going to have a strategy based on my starting plan, or I'm going to develop a strategy based on my starting plan. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But it's really important to have a routine. And when you develop your routine, it's really important to be able to repeat that routine. A good start comes with or begins with a systematic approach. And it's not just about putting your boat on the starting line and kind of winging it mentality. We want to be able to have a system or have an approach that we can repeat. And as we repeat it, we can refine it. And that's how we become better. And that's how we improve. And then lastly is the execution of that approach. So actually getting off the starting line and having a system or having a way to repeat or have a routine that you can repeat makes it easier to build off of that. And you can break it down into sections and have different areas that you can work on and improve from. And how I separate or divide my strategy up is I like to figure out what the type of day is. And this is going to really help me kind of set a guideline for where I want to start. So we're going to talk about a little bit of strategy real quick, and then we're going to get back into the starting. So here, a pressure day would be what I would call a light air day, or a day where we have large pressure differentials across the race course. In a lighter day, I like to start where there's evidently more pressure, and along with everybody else, they're all going to want to start in that one little puff. But also I want to start where I can sail towards or get towards the best pressure on the race course. And that doesn't always mean that you're starting in the best pressure, but you're setting yourself up for what is going to be the meat of the pressure, the best pressure on the race course. The next part about developing a strategy here, or a start plan based on your strategy, is figuring out what type of day is it. Is it going to be a shifty, oscillating breeze day? Like inland lake style sailing can be pretty shifty, puffy. Sailing in certain wind directions, like in St. Pete when it's coming from the city front, can be pretty shifty and puffy. And in oscillating shifts, you want to keep track of the wind phase or try to figure out if there's a pattern with those puffs and those shifts. And that's going to help you develop an area of the starting line where you want to start. So I have on here, if starboard tack is lifted, your priority is to hold your lane and sail straight. So remember that, and as we start talking about density on the starting line, if your priority is to sail straight, you're going to want to start in an area with less dense or fewer boats. So that gives you the ability, or makes it a little easier for you to sail straight. If you start in a high dense area, your ability to hold a lane for a long period of time becomes pretty challenging. If port tack is the favorite tack or the long tack, and you want to get on the long tack immediately, your priority is to tack right away. You're going to want to start near the weather end so that you have that option to tack right away. Yeah, if you want to tack right away and you start down near the pin, you got some obstacles that you have to achieve first before you can have the ability to tack. In persistent shifts, the priority is sailing towards the shift. So in a Miami venue or a St. Pete venue in a sea breeze direction where we know we got to get to one side of the race course, your priority is to sail towards that shift. And you need to do whatever you need to do to make sure that you can sail towards that shift. So getting off the line and being able to hold your lane if you want to sail straight for a long period of time is critical, or being able to have the option to tack if you need to get to the right side of the race course. One more slide here as we close up the strategy is I have these rules of thumb for wind ranges and how I want to think about getting off the starting line. And in a lighter day or a day that's below hull speed, your priority is sailing towards the best pressure. Also, your priority is making sure that you have the ability to sail off the line at full speed. If you're around a lot of boats, it's a lot harder, more difficult to maintain a high speed. You're going to have a lot of choppy sea states, disturbed breeze. So in light air, you really need to focus on finding a low dense area. A medium air day would kind of be marginal hiking conditions to full hike conditions. You have a wide range of strategic options where you just want to basically figure out what the wind phase is doing and try to stay in phase. So your starting strategy then goes back to the density on the starting line. And we'll dig into more in that with some photos in a little bit. A heavier day, or what I like to call an overpowering day, is a day where we want to minimize maneuvers. We all know how difficult it is to tackle lightning in a big sea state, and it's pretty windy. You lose a lot of speed, and that speed is pretty expensive. And so we want to be able to get off the starting line so that we have the ability to minimize our tacks. If we have a poor start, you're looking at doing 2 or 3 tacks right in a row in the first minute or 2 minutes of the race. And that's pretty expensive. You're not setting yourself up for a good first beat there. And you're going to have a hard time executing your strategy for that leg. So we want to look at what we want to achieve here. If our goal is to sail straight off the line, or if our goal is to tack as soon as we can, we need to be able to start the boat so that we can execute that goal. So step 1 here in our routine development, and this is just one routine, and I'm sure you've all heard many variations from many experts on getting a boat off the starting line and how they like to look at a routine. What I call a routine is something that I can repeat. And what we're going to talk about tonight is just one of the routines. And this is a routine that I like to practice, and it's pretty simple. And so the first step here is establishing where we want to start on the starting line. And we're going to go back to our strategy to figure that out. So here's a photo. This is a drone footage from Miami a couple years ago. And here we divide the line up into 3 sections. And I like to do this. I like to give different areas or define areas of the starting line. So we have our weather third of the line, we have our middle section of the line, we have our pin third of the line. So you want to pick an area to start in based on what your strategy is. If your strategy is to sail straight for an extended period of time, you're going to look for low density, whatever area has fewer boats. If your goal is to tack right away, you're going to look at starting near the weather end of the line so that you have that ability to tack quickly without having to managing too much traffic. Another note on here is I say not a specific spot. So you pick an area so that you have flexibility within that area. You know, if you pick a certain spot on the line, and I really dislike when people say, I want to win the boat end or I want to win the pin end, your percentages of getting a good start are pretty small if you try to pick a specific spot to start. Rather focus on that area that you want to start in and find the low dense area of that section. So step 2 here is tacking from port tack to starboard tack in that general area that you want to start in. And we're going to look at a photo here explaining that a bit. But in this routine, when you tack, you want to note the time you tacked. You want to look at how far off the line you are. And you want to pay attention to how long it takes you to get from that spot you tacked to the starting line. Now, to get to Ralph Stevenson's question here is distance. How do you call distance, or what's the bow person's role in calling the distance and time? I like to use line sights for that reference. And a little bit later in the presentation, we'll talk more and more about using those line sights in ranging time and distance. But what a line sight is you can get a transit from the committee boat end through the pin end to a site on shore, or vice versa, through the pin end through the committee boat end to a site on shore, so that you get where the starting line is. So as you sail up and approach that starting line, and you can look through the committee boat end or the pin end, and you see your line sight in line with the pin or the committee boat, you know you're on the line or pretty darn close to it. Then it's also to get good line sights for depth in the box, or the starting box, what I like to call the area to leeward of the starting line. In a couple slides from now, we're going to talk more about that depth of the box and where the fleet is sailing and how deep they are. And when we're talking more about our approach, when we're tacked in our spot from port to starboard, where are we at and how deep in the box are we, and how long is it going to take to get back up to the line. So here's a photo illustrating the step 2 process here of tacking from port to starboard. And as you tack in that area, circled with the red circle here, you're going to pay attention to the time. So what time did you tack, and how long is it going to take you, or how much time is it going to take you from get to that position to your starting line, or using your line sight. Now you can do this exercise even though you're not in sequence. What I like to do is develop a practice start. So actually do a 3-minute or 4-minute starting sequence on your own. Start your watch, pick an area of the line that you want to start, and start working on your time and distance. And developing that position that you want to tack, getting comfortable with that position, getting comfortable with tacking the boat and accelerating the boat to sail towards the line. Or maybe you're a little early in that 3-minute sequence and you have to kill a little bit of time. How much time do you have to kill? That's a really good question to ask. And that's a really good data point to figure out. You don't want to have too much time to kill. And one thing that I like to say is, on my final approach, when I do that tack from port to starboard, I want to have what I call half time to kill. So say I have a tack in that spot at a minute, and I'm 30 seconds away from the line. I have 30 seconds to kill, so I have half that time to kill. That just basically ensures that you're not going to be late. If anything, you're going to be early, and it's easier to slow down than it is to, if you're late, to make up that time. So tacking your spot earlier than later assures that you're not going to be late for the start, but then we're going to have to work on controlling our boat speed. And we'll get into that in the next couple slides as well. So in doing that routine, from tacking from port to starboard, and then we get to our spot, we took that data point of how long it took us to get to the line. Now we're going to reach away on starboard, and we're going to pay attention to how far away from that spot we get. Kind of doing this triangular start of time and distance. So you can sail for a minute, jibe back onto port, sail for a minute, tack back to starboard, and you know your time to get back to the line there. So in doing this routine, it also achieves a couple other things that are really important too. Has your timing changed? Maybe the wind speed and the direction has changed. If you experience a left shift in your starting sequence, it's going to be a little more difficult to get back up to the starting line. It's going to take you more time to get to the starting line. So it's important to do this routine a couple different times in your starting sequence to really pay attention to what's going on. If the wind shifted right, you're going to get to the starting line a lot quicker. So you're going to have to adjust your timing and your distance from the line to make up for that right shift. So here's another photo, drone shot of this approach. So we have the area that we want to start in. We want to start at the boat half of the line or boat third of the line. How far away from that spot are you currently sailing? And how far away from the starting line are you? So here is a good shot of what I like to call the conga lines forming, or these conveyor belt style of lines. And we've all seen this and been involved in these lines. And we're probably, some of us are probably unsure how it happens or what other boats are doing when they're in these lines, in these formats. And this is what I was talking about of getting the line side on shore. So if we look at the yellow starting line, we can get a line sight extended from the pin end through the committee boat to a spot on shore, or vice versa, go back the other way. And then we also know, or we need to know, how far one boat length is off the line, 2 boat lengths, 3 boat lengths, 4 boat lengths, 5 boat lengths off the line, so that we know how deep in the box we are. So that's really important data to know, so that when we tack from port to starboard, we need to know how far off the line we are and how long it's going to take us to get back to the line. And then knowing that distance and that time gives us the ability to repeat. And then as we keep repeating and collecting that data, then we can look at how the breeze is shifting or wind speed is changing and how we need to adapt or change our routine, what we need to do, if we need to kill some more time or if we need to speed up the routine so that we're ensuring that we're not going to be late for the start. So here's an aerial footage of some conga lines or these conveyor belts forming. And you want to pay attention to what the fleet is doing as well. So is the fleet setting up high in the starting box? Are these conga lines forming 2 or 3 boat lengths off the line? Or are they forming more like 5, 6, or 7 boat lengths off the line? And paying attention to that is going to help you develop your routine. You want to be able to have the ability to maneuver in this pre-start sequence. And if you're above the conveyor belt and above that conga line, and you're setting up on the line, you're kind of setting yourself up to be what some people refer to as the marshmallow. You're going to be on the line too early, and you're going to set yourself up for someone to start directly to leeward of you, and you can't defend that situation, and you're going to have a poor start. If the conga line is setting up a little farther away from the line or deeper in the box, and you're involved in that line, in a couple slides here, we'll see how to manage that and when you want to tack or if you want to continue on. But it gives you more options if you're involved in that line, and it's really going to help you set yourself up in a nice hole and give you the ability to have a higher percentage of holding your lane coming off the line. So here's some data that we've collected, and we want to look at how we're going to use that data. So again, it's important that we figure out how far off the line we are, how far off the line these conga lines or conveyor belts are setting up off the line, how deep in the box is the fleet sailing, and how many seconds or how many boat lengths does it take us to get from that specific spot or from that conveyor belt back up to the line on starboard. And if anything is changing, wind shifts or velocity, how do we need to adapt for that? A good way to feel if something is changing is your angle sailing back to the starting line. You can look at a compass heading. You can just look at sail trim. If you're trimmed in more upwind and you're having a hard time getting back to the line or realizing your angle is different, it's a left shift. If your sails are more eased and you're approaching the line quicker, it's a right shift. And constantly paying attention to that as you're doing your routine and your approach, it's going to give you a better idea to how to adapt or change your sequence. When you tack from port to starboard on a final approach, it's important to note how much time there is left, the time you tacked, and how much time you have left in the sequence, and how long it takes you to get to the line. So we're on our final approach here. So this is our last tack from port to starboard. And the biggest question is, and what a lot of people struggle with, is when do I tack? And in more cases than not, I see people setting up too early, and that leads to the effect of not having a good lane coming off the starting line. You either get set up for someone starting directly below you, coming in from behind and hooking you, starting directly below you, and you're slow and you don't have enough speed to maneuver the boat and defend that. Or you have someone that comes in from port tack and tacks to leeward of you. And we'll talk about that maneuver in a second here as well. So when do you tack is the biggest question. And what you need to look at is density. What is the density like ahead of me? So if you're on port tack and you're sailing back to your spot or your area that you want to start in, it's important to note how many boats are ahead of you, and if they're on port tack with you, or if they're on starboard tack heading back at you. Ask yourself the question, can I sail past them, or do I need to tack before them? You know, how much time is left in the sequence, and how long is it going to take you to get back to the starting line? That's going to help you answer that question. And then you got to pay attention to what the density is like behind you. How many boats are potential threats? Meaning, how many boats can tack to leeward of me once I tack to starboard? How many boats am I going to need to defend my position against? If you have a boat trailing pretty tight behind you, you got to anticipate them tacking with you or directly under you when you tack. So maybe tacking sooner rather than later to give yourself an opportunity to defend the hole, or tacking much later in the sequence so that you tack and you don't have to kill as much time and you can just sail at full speed. Here's a photo showing some density. And the drone footage is great. It's an awesome tool for showing how boats are setting up on the line. And you see here that this race committee did a really nice job of setting a good length starting line, as there are plenty of huge open areas on the line on the picture above the top photo. And then you can see where the density is. So high density at the weather end, high density kind of at that pin third, and high density right at the pin. In the bottom photo, you see a lot of boats starting in the weather half of the line and not so many boats starting at the pin half of the line. So the question is, going back to your strategy, is where do I want to start? Is your priority to sail straight on starboard? And then you're going to want to look for these low density areas. If your strategy is to tack right away, then you're going to need to start near the weather end and maybe being in the density or finding that least dense area in that area that you want to start in. So here we have the conga line forming. So we have boats on port sailing back towards the boat end, committee boat end. We have boats on starboard reaching back towards the pin half of the line. And we're going to be the red boat here circled. So I asked the question here, where do I want to start? So you're probably thinking you want to start in the boat half of the line, which is why you're up here. You have a boat directly in front of you and you have a boat directly behind you. So you've got to keep asking yourself that question. How much time do I have left? How far off the line am I? And when I tack, how long is it going to take me to get to the line? So you're going to want to start evaluating that time frame. And as you get closer and closer to what you're going to call your settle time, or the time you need to be racing, you need to be on starboard tack for that settle time. We'll get to that in a second here as well. And you got to know what the boat behind you is anticipating on doing. If you keep sailing straight, and you're getting closer to that settle time and you're still on port tack, your option here is to tack when you can and sail towards the line, hoping that the boat doesn't tack directly to leeward of you. If the boat does tack directly to leeward of you, you have to maintain full speed so that you can sail higher to open up the gap before the starting gun goes off. And that's involved in holding your lane coming off the starting line. If you have lots of time left in the sequence and you tack in your spot and you have, say, 30 seconds to kill, and that boat tacks to leeward of you, you need to be able to defend that. So coming out of the tack, sailing slightly deeper with speed, so that boat behind you tacks sooner, then you have the speed to sail higher, almost head to wind, to drift up or separate up off of that boat to leeward. So really paying attention to what that guy's going to do. And if he's going to tack directly to leeward of you, you need to have that game plan already in your head before you tack so that you can defend that. Another photo here of picking your spot of where you want to start. So I highlight in red the holes developing, and then I'm going to look at density. So we're going to be the yellow boat again, circled here, and we have green guy right in front of us. And we're, again, paying attention to our time, how much time is left, how far off the line are we in terms of distance, and how long is it going to take us to get back to our starting line. And we're going to want to pick one of these holes. So you see at the weather end, we have a lot of boats tacking, sailing back towards us. You're going to have to ask yourself the question, do I tack before that group? Or do I have enough time to sail past that group and tack above them? If you say, I don't have enough time to tack after that group, I need to find a spot before that group, you're analyzing these holes that I highlighted. And you're going to look at what green does. If green takes that first hole, then you might want to sail past and go to the second hole. If that first hole, the larger hole here in the middle, if green takes that, you can have the option of tacking to leeward of green. Just make sure that you maintain your spacing with the boat that you tacked above. So again, paying attention to your time and your distance is going to help you make that decision of where you want to start, or what spot you want to tack in to make your final approach. So here we're going to talk about the maneuver of tacking into that spot. And well, I want to spend a little bit of time on this maneuver because this is where a lot of teams make mistakes. And also I want to kind of emphasize something here. As you notice that we're kind of talking more about a port approach. And in my mind, in the way that I coach, every approach is a port approach. The difference is the timing. When do I tack to starboard? You can do a port approach and tack on to starboard at 2 minutes. And say, hey, it's light air, I'm at 2 minutes, I'm on final approach. Or you could tack from port to starboard for final approach at 45 seconds. It all depends on where you're at in that line, the conga line or the conveyor belt, how far away from the line you are, how much time you have to get to the line, and how much time you have to kill. So talking about this maneuver here, tacking into your spot. And I want to highlight this. As I was going through the drone footage and looking at the video, this poor guy here did not have a good start, as you can see. And he had a really good hole that he was tacking into. So his game plan was right. The mistake was the execution of the tack into that hole. And so as I highlight here, that guy is going to tack, and I'm going to get my marker out here. So the yellow guy wants to tack in this spot here. And in doing so, what he needs to do is sail in that orange highlighted arrow, as I said, be higher, closer to the boats that he's ducking. And as you're tacking, you want to finish your tack so that you're at least bow even or bow out on the boats that you're tacking under. That gives you the opportunity to head up or luff and pin them It also gives you the opportunity to have clear air when you want to accelerate the boat. If you tack where he's tacking down here, you're already bow aft of the boats to windward. You're not in clear air, and you're not going to have the ability to accelerate, as you see here in the bottom two photos. So it's really important that when you're picking your spot, that you're sailing or ducking these boats close, so that when you do tack, you can complete your tack and be bow out, or at least bow even with those boats that you tack underneath. Now, in the racing rules, we do have to complete our tack by assuming a close hauled angle before we can establish luffing rights. So in doing this tack here and tacking to leeward of these groups, these two boats, we do want to complete our tack, but then once we complete our tack, if we're tacking too early and we have some time to kill, we can luff up. And we have those two boats pinned, so we have control of the situation, but you're bow even or a little bit bow ahead. So you have the opportunity to have clear air, put your bow down and accelerate. So it's really important here to practice this tacking into your spot drill. And if you have a couple boats, I know we all are jonesing to get out sailing and do some practice starts. But if you have the opportunity to get two families out and do some sailing drills, this is a really fun drill to do. Is have one boat luffing, simulating a start, and have the other boat practice tacking this maneuver, tacking to leeward of that boat, and see if you can finish your tack, bow out, but still have control of that guy to windward of you. So you're on final approach here. So we executed that tack from port to starboard. Questions you need to ask yourself again are, what's my time and distance? So how far off the line am I? How much time do I have left? And how long is it going to take me to get back to the line? Look and observe where you're at with traffic and density. So how many boats are around me? How many boats are to windward? How many boats are to leeward? Am I in the most density, or is it fairly open? And that's going to give you the ability of when, or help you answer the question, when do I need to start accelerating? If you're in a high dense area, so chances are of holding your lane off the line. If you're in a more open area or low dense area, you can be a little more conservative with your line judgment. And the last thing here is the most important one, is controlling speed and spacing with the boats around you. So when you do perform that maneuver of tacking from port to starboard, it's really critical that you maintain, at least stay even speed with that boat to windward of you. If you are at all slower than the boat to windward, your chances of holding that lane, your chance of getting off the starting line are really, really small. Same goes for the boat to leeward of you. If you are faster than the boat to leeward of you, but you're sailing towards them and you need to kill some time, it's a simple fix of just luffing the jib and putting the bow up. And we'll talk more about that maneuver in a couple slides as well. But have someone on your team dedicated, maybe your middle person can head on a swivel, look above and below, and help you manage your boat speed with the boats around you, making sure that you're at least staying even. A couple questions here that I want to get to. Bob Shapiro, how far does the starting line have to be away from square in order to decide to modify your starting plan? So talking about favored end of the starting line there, and you'll notice that when you're doing your approach here as well. And when talking about the favored end of the line, in most cases, it is favorable to start near the favored end of the line. But you got to look at the percentages. If the high density is starting at that favored end of the line, so let's pick an example, Bob, that the pin end is favored. And there's going to be a lot of density at the pin end. But we really want to sail straight. We really want to get to the left. There's not going to be that many boats to have a successful start off the pin end and are going to be able to sail in clear air for as long as they want. They're either going to have to suck it up and sail in bad air for a little bit if they want to continue on, or they might get pinned and have to sail in bad air. They don't have the ability to tack and find clear air. So if the pin end is favored, or that pin third of the line is favored, I would start above the density. So you have the ability to sail straight, but you also are giving yourself a chance or a higher percentage of getting off the line and sailing in that front row. Vice versa, if the boat end is favored, and you're going to notice that a lot of density up at the windward end of the line, you can still start in that area, but you want to find a low density area of that starting line. And that might mean starting more midline, but it's more important to get yourself off the line in that front row and have the ability to sail straight. The most important part of the race is the start. And if you can sail straight for the first minute, minute and a half, you're going to be in really good shape. Or if your goal or strategy is to tack as soon as possible, but then sail straight for as long as you can, same idea there. Another question from Debbie. And this just depicting, you are the last boat to tack onto starboard. Do you suggest being one of the last boats to do so? We'll go back to one of those photos here. So in this photo here, picking your spot. I'm not saying you want to be the last boat to tack to starboard. What you need to do is match with the boats in the group that you're around. So again, look at your time and distance and how far offline you are. And you're going to be in this conga line and you're going to be sailing back and forth. And if you do this approach of early in the sequence of tacking from port to starboard, sailing towards the line, noting your time and distance, create your triangle, so then reach back down the line and off the line for a set amount of time, jibe back into the conga line, sail back towards your spot, you're establishing yourself in a group, and you're going to focus on the boat ahead and the boat behind. And as people are starting to tack for final approach, note the time and the distance. So you say, okay, if I tack with the group ahead of me, I'm going to have to kill 45 seconds. That's a little more time than I want to kill, or that I'm able to successfully manage. If it's really windy, killing 45 seconds is really hard. Boats are going to be slipping sideways. You're going to be really down speed. You're going to have a hard time accelerating the boat and not falling down in the boat to leeward of you. So it's okay to wait a little bit longer. Be one of the last boats to tack to starboard so that you don't put yourself in that situation. In lighter air, it's probably better to be on starboard sooner so that you have the ability to control your boat speed. So if you get too slow, if you have to kill speed or kill time and you get too slow, it's going to take you a while to reaccelerate. So being on starboard tack and then gradually managing your time and distance is going to set yourself up for a better approach. But again, it's all relative to what the boats around you are doing. And going back to that picking your spot scenario here, where we have two holes. We have a hole here, we have a hole here, but we have a bunch of boats over here at the boat end that are starting to come back. We also have a big hole here. So we could say, okay, green guy is going to tack in this hole. I'm going to tack underneath this guy here and take that spot. So again, it's head out of the boat. It's looking at how the fleet or the density is setting up. What are your options ahead of you? If you're selling into density, then your option might be to tack earlier and manage your speed and time and distance from there. And then you're looking at the group behind you and trying to anticipate what they're going to do. But at least you have some sort of awareness of what's going on around you. And you know, because we've done this routine, you know that you're 5 boat lengths off the line. And then you know it's going to take you 40 to 45 seconds to get back to the starting line. So you know your settle time. You know when you need to be racing. And you know how to manage that and control that situation. Any other questions so far? If there are questions, please feel free to fire away in the chat box. And also, I do want to emphasize that this presentation is going to be recorded and it will be available for you guys later on the class website. And as you guys rewatch this, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you just want to chat with me about sailing, you can email me anytime and I'll be more than happy to get back in touch with you.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
Debbie had a question on slide number 23.
Slide 23, okay.
She said, in this depiction, are you the last boat to tack onto starboard? And do you suggest being one of the last to do so?
Yeah, so,
And actually, Debbie just said that you did answer it.
yeah, but this is a good one too to talk about, because obviously this guy is one of the last boats to tack from port to starboard, and you see how it worked out for him. Now, his approach or his tack wasn't executed properly, which is why it did not work out for him. So you can, and if you know, and we've all been in this situation where we're doing this port approach and the time is ticking away, it's really important to hug or duck the transoms of these boats that are sailing towards the line. If you see that the boats on starboard are making their way towards the starting line and everyone is racing, you need to sail as close as you can behind those guys so that when you find your hole and you tack, you're bow even with those guys and you're back on the front row and you can get off the starting line. If you're too deep in the box here and you tack, which this guy did, he's bow aft and he's never going to be able to accelerate. And forgive me for saying this, but you just got shot out the ass can. So really, knowing your time and distance and knowing how far off the line you are and knowing what the fleet or have awareness of what the fleet is doing and where you need to position yourself when you do tack from port to starboard. So here, talking more about our final approach, and we're gonna analyze the green guy here. So he established this position, not sure when he tacked from port to starboard, but he tacked to leeward of this guy, and you notice that he is bow ahead of him, so he has clear air, and he has a good space to leeward of him. Now here we want to manage this space. How we do that is if we have time to kill, we use, I like to call the term kill time high or high kill. And what we do is we luff the jib and we simply turn the boat up into the wind. We don't luff the main. If we want to kill time, we want to kill time high and we keep the jib semi-trimmed in and we luff the main, the bow is still going to be dragging the boat sideways. The jib is still going to be dragging the boat sideways. And we're not going to be able to create that gap or maximize that gap to the left of us. So if you need to kill time, you kill time high, you luff the jib, you keep the main somewhat trimmed in, and you just simply turn the boat head to wind. And what that is going to do is it's going to open up the gap on the boat to leeward of you and give you that runway, that lane to accelerate and get off the line. Now to build speed, say you're killing time high, but then you notice the boat to windward of you is a little bit faster and I need to regain some speed. Simply ease the main out slightly, not much, because you still want to have some pressure on the leech. You don't want the bow to go too far down. You can trim your jib back in, and it's really important that the boat stays flat when you're doing all this. Trim the jib back in and the boat will accelerate without sliding sideways. And then you can trim both sails in equally as you start to accelerate. And you're still going to maintain that gap to leeward of you. Once we talk about holding the lane, we'll get into more of that sequence in a little bit. But on final approach here, we're the screen guy. We need to focus on matching speed with the boat to windward. We need to focus on our time and distance. So how are we in relation to the line? And going back to Ralph's question here, our bow person should not be the person calling time. A bow person should be focused on the line sight, maybe helping out with speed management with the boats around, and communicating how far off the line you are. Now, if you have a really good bow person, the bow person's going to give you boat lengths to the line, but they're also going to give you how much time you have to the line, which is extremely valuable information. An example of that information would be like one boat length, 8 seconds, 10 seconds from the line. So if you give that time reference and you know in your spot how far off the line you are, you know that you hear 8 seconds, but you're only 6 seconds from the line, you have 2 seconds to kill. You can do a little high kill. You can luff the jib for a second, then retrim in and accelerate so that you hit the line at full speed. But having that reference of where the line is critical too. So getting line sights is important, using your line sights. If there's no line sights available, you can look at the angle of the flags on the committee boat, and roughly if the line is square to the wind direction, you can picture a 90-degree line off those flags. You can look at how the committee boat's hanging on its anchor compared to the other boat, and that'll kind of give you a general reference of where the line is. You can use the other boats as a reference too. If we want to stick with our rule of being bow even or bow ahead of the boats around us and manage our speed that way, kind of putting a little bit of trust in them that they know where the line is as well. Now, a general rule of thumb is you never want to be too late for the start. And we always want to be on time at full speed at the start. But if we have to pull the trigger because the boats around us are pulling the trigger, we want to take everybody over the line with us as well. So don't be afraid to control your speed and don't get gun shy. You have to maintain and stay equal speed with the boats around you if you want to have a successful start. So here's a little more information about managing your boat speed. And here's that term I like to use is kill time high, or as a tactician, what I would say to my driver and trimmer is I would say high kill. And I would say high kill for 10 seconds or high kill for 8 seconds. As a tactician calling tactics on big boats and J70s, I use this starting routine all the time. And that's why I want to share it with you guys is we've had great success using the starting routine. And in this high kill or kill time high, what we do is we keep the main trimmed in so that you have pressure on the leech of the main. And what that pressure on the leech of the main is doing is it's helping you keep the bow up. And it's also giving you some steerage so that you have the ability to maneuver the boat still. Now, as you kill time high and you want to go slower, you're going to sail the boat almost head to wind or just off head to wind. And you can use the main slightly to create a little bit of luff, but we don't want 100% luff. If we do 100% luff, then you're going to have the risk of losing all steerage and really having a dramatic drop in boat speed. And then once we see that dramatic drop in boat speed, you're going to have a long, hard time getting the boat to reaccelerate. So it's really important to maintain a little bit of flow and keep some pressure on the leech of the mainsail. If we want to build speed, or what we say settle time or racing, main sheet gets eased slightly, so you take that pressure off the leech of the mainsail. But again, we don't want to luff the mainsail. When the jib gets trimmed in, it's going to pull the bow down. And if you're using the helm to pull the bow down as well, it gets exaggerated on how far the bow and how dramatic the bow gets pulled down. I'm sure we've all experienced that sensation is when the jib gets trimmed in, we lose control of the bow. It gets drugged down to leeward. That's because the main got eased too far. So it's really important that we ease the main, take a little bit of pressure off the leech of the mainsail, but we still have it trimmed in slightly so that when we do trim the jib in, we don't lose control of the bow. As a crew, it's really important that the boat remains flat throughout this whole final approach starting sequence. If the boat is heeled to leeward, you're going to have the tendency of sailing up or creating windward helm. And when we want to reaccelerate the boat, and the boat is heeling to leeward, but we want the bow to go down, we're really going to have to use a lot of helm and trim the jib in dramatically to get that bow to go down. So it's not going to accelerate as fast. And vice versa, if the boat is heeling to windward, and we want the bow to come up for a high kill, it's going to be a little more difficult to get the bow to come up, or a little more delayed to get that bow to go up. And seconds really matter here. So if the boat above you wants to trim in and go, and they're going slightly faster than you, and your boat is heeling to leeward, and you need to accelerate, that 1 second difference is going to make or break your start. So it's really important that as crew, you work on keeping the boat flat throughout this whole process and on final approach. Pull the bow down slightly to accelerate, and that angle, that acceleration angle, depends on the sea state and how much velocity you have. If it's windier and flat water, you don't really need to pull the bow down that much. You know, sailing just above close hauled is going to be good enough to get the boat to accelerate. If it's light, or if we're experiencing a large sea state, you're going to need to find an angle lower or farther away from close hauled to get the boat to accelerate, and then you can come back up to close hauled once you get closer to full speed. Question here from Clark Newman is, talk briefly about line sag and big fleets get more aggressive. Yeah, so I'm going to go to this next slide here for you, Clark. And we're going to look a little bit at that. And what I say, when you say get more aggressive, I like that term. And you need to be aggressive when you're in line with these boats. And looking at line sag, you know, here we got some sag right here. And this guy, I would say, has very little reference of where the line is. He's farther away from the density. He's got a couple of boats ahead. And if I was this guy right here, I would ask myself the question, how much time is left? And are these two boats circled in yellow, are they too early? Or are they right on time? And if you think they're early and they got some time to kill, your spacing might be good. And you just do a little high kill, you maintain your gap. But what I really want to emphasize with line sag is as long as you're staying bow even or slightly bow advanced of the boats around you, and you're starting near the middle of the line, it's okay to be a little more aggressive. If you're starting near an end, you're going to have a better sense of where the line is. So at that point, you will just want to maintain speed and stay bow even with the boats around you. Line sag really helps having line sights as well. So if you can get a line sight, your chances of managing that line sag are going to be greater. And really practice using line sights. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I get my line sights, but then you come back to shore and you say, well, how often did you use your line sights? And they say, well, we got one, but we didn't really use it. You know, I get that a lot. And that's one of the frustrating things of being a coach is you get these guys to get line sights and they use them every once in a while, but then they start to get more relaxed and not using the line sights. And that's where the aggressiveness comes in. If you have confidence that you know where the line is, be aggressive. If you don't have confidence of where the line is, then go back to just maintain position with the boats around you. Maintain boat speed, be just a little faster, but bow even and bow out on the boats around you is going to be the better position, safer position. So here in this photo, we have a lot of scallops in the starting line. And you see this a lot, and the drone footage really shows that, emphasizes that. So this guy here looks like he's at full speed and racing, and he could be. We don't know what time we have here, but you really need to know, and this is where our practice routine comes in, is how far off the line am I? How long is it going to take me to get from here to the line? And how much time do I have left? And if you know and you have confidence in your routine and your timing, by all means, start racing and leave these guys in the dust. But if this guy doesn't have that data and he's racing and then he gets closer and closer to the line, he's really going to have to slow the boat down. And that's where if you're these guys, this guy right here, or even this guy here, you're going to have to make a decision on what to do with that guy. He's going to put the brakes on and you're this boat to windward of you. If he puts the brakes on, where are you going to go? If you try to go to leeward of him, he's going to bear away and protect his hole. And so this is something that I like to do is called baiting. And you bait them to do that. So they get to the line too early and they put the brakes on and you're still coming in from behind. You can make it look like you're going to go to leeward of them so that when they put their bow down and defend that hole to leeward, then you do an aggressive upwind or almost head to wind coast. And you do this with a lot of speed so that you can drift up above him and also getting a hole or separation to windward of him. And then once you do that coast, it's important to get the bow back down and reaccelerate. But your timing of that has to be spot on, and knowing that when you start to accelerate, you're not going to accelerate too much and close your distance to the line too early there. These guys in yellow really need to know what their time and distance is. They're exposed, but there's not much traffic around them, but there's boats coming in from behind. So if they're too early and they put the brakes on, they become a prime target for someone coming in and doing that maneuver and stuffing them at the start. So it's really important that when you get on final approach and we're looking at all these scallops, we're looking at the boats around us, just managing your gap or managing your distance with them. Saying that if I'm this guy here and I'm bowed back on two boats around me, I need to start sailing. I need to really accelerate and get the boat going as fast as possible to get bow ahead of those guys. It doesn't matter where the line is at that point. You're just focusing on trying to put yourself in a position to get a successful start. If they're early, you're going to be early too, take them with you, but at least you gave yourself a chance of having a successful, clean start. If they're late, you're really late. So if you're bow even, at least you're going to get off the line in a clean lane with the boats around you. And that's the priority, is being able to start the boat and have a lane and sail straight in that lane for an extended period of time compared to the boats around you. These guys down here, I don't know what they're doing. So you see they're setting up pretty deep in the box, and they're the two last boats to tack to starboard. And so if you're this guy here and you are that late, you need to be focusing on ducking these boats here. So say it being more to windward or more to weather, so that when you do tack, you can tack bow even in line with the fleet. Now this guy is really deep in the box. When he tacks, he's going to be bow back regardless. So what you would need to do here in this situation, depending on the time, and it looks like everyone's starting to race, is sail upwind. Sail upwind as long as you can till a spot opens up that you can tack into, or sail upwind and say, I don't have a spot to tack, then you're actually going to start on port and ducking the fleet, but at least you're close and you're doing ducking. You're not sailing upwind on port in bad air. So now we're going to get into some holding your lane stuff. So we talked about developing a strategy. So figuring out where we want to start or which area of the line we want to start in. We talked about developing a routine. So tacking from port to starboard, noting your time and distance. Where am I at? How much time was left when I tacked? How much time did it take me to get from that spot to the line? How many boat lengths was I off the line? Then we're going to reach away from that spot, sail for a minute, get back, jibe, get back into the conga line or the conveyor belt. Maybe do that approach 2 or 3 more times, and then we're getting back to our final approach time. And then we're going to start looking at the density and the boats around us, the traffic around us. We're going to pick our spot to tack, and then we're going to execute that tack from port to starboard. So tacking into our spot so that we are bow even or slightly bow ahead of the boat to windward of us. Then we're going to manage our speed. We want to be bow ahead of the boats, and if they start to accelerate, we need to start to accelerate. So having someone dedicated on your boat to look and help you out with that speed control, having your bow person paying attention to the line sight, how many boat lengths off the line am I, how much time from the line am I, is going to be really helpful. We're in our final approach, we're matching speed, where everything's good, the start gun goes off. Now we need to hold our lane. And I have on here the first thing to being successful in holding your lane off the starting line happens in your final approach. Like I said, it happens in that last 30 seconds where we're managing our speed and we're managing our distance with the boats around us. And it's really important that when we do that final approach to starboard, that we have half time left, or we have half time to kill. If we're a minute away from the starting line, we want to have 30 seconds to kill. What that 30 seconds gives us is the opportunity to work up off the boat to leeward of us by controlling speed and doing a couple high kills, accelerate, high kill, accelerate, working up off that boat to leeward of you. It also gets you closer to the boats to windward, and you're going to manage your boat speed with the boats to windward, so you stay bow out and bow ahead. And so that gives you the better opportunity or better runway to accelerate and get off the line. If you tack into your spot a little late, then you really need to focus on getting to target speed or getting to full speed as soon as you can so that you hit the line a little bit faster than the boats around you. If you have speed and you're the fastest boat compared to the boats around you, you will be able to hold your lane. Here's another aerial drone shot of a starting line. And we're going to talk about a couple boats here. So again, the green guy here does a really good job of picking his spot. You notice that he's slightly bow advanced on the boat to windward, and he's pretty tight on that boat to windward, and he's got a nice gap on the boat to leeward of him. So if he's early, all he has to do is do a high kill and luff the boat to windward a little bit. And doing that high kill, he's going to separate off the boat to leeward. As soon as he starts getting too slow compared to the boats around him, he can just simply reaccelerate, get the boat going a little bit faster. Okay, I got to do another high kill, fine. All that's doing is opening up the gap to leeward. And he has no threats. So again, another important thing to talk about here is if, say, for some reason you had a boat coming from to leeward here, potentially taking that hole, you would need to basically turn your boat sideways in that spot. So a big aggressive ease on the main, trim the jib in, heel the boat to windward, get the boat to turn down. And then the most important part is as soon as this guy bails, is to go back into that high kill position. So use that speed that you generated, go head to wind, regain all that distance that you lost, and get back into that good spot with a gap to leeward of you. So this guy here circled in red looks like he's going to be tacking into this spot here, which could be a good spot depending on the time. So you see he's probably 3 boat lengths off the line. So we need to be able to perform the maneuver of tacking and have enough time to get the boat to accelerate to target speed before we reach the starting line. Now, if he's pretty late in the sequence, say there's 30 or 40 seconds to go, tacking here would be great. But again, he need to be approaching from this angle here. If he's close hauled already and he tacks, he's going to be bow back on these 2 boats, which isn't going to be a good start. If he ducks this group pack of boats here, sails upwind for a second and tacks, he's going to have a better start, which is why I put this star here. And this is something that's hard to visually see when you're trying to get off the starting line. There's a lot going on. It's kind of chaotic. And we really need to have our heads out of the boat and scanning for these holes or our opportunities to tack. And if there's enough time in the sequence here to reach off, sail at full speed, get to this good spot here, sail upwind, you can even tack in front of this guy because this guy's probably late. You will have a much better start, a better setup than trying to tack into this hole here. When you're tacking too late and too far back, these 2 boats are going to roll you, and then you got a boat to leeward that you're going to lose your lane to. So it's really important to analyze the spacing or the density and try to find these spots. On the Lightning, I like to have the middle crew doing that. And as I do middle crew often on Lightnings, and that's what I'm looking at, or that's what I'm helping my helmsman out on the starting line, is I'm the head out of the boat guy, head on a swivel, and I'm helping him look for these holes. And I won't tell him or tell her where to tack or when to tack or what to do. I think it's important that the helmsman starts the boat, but I will help them locate these spots. And I will say, in this moment here, I would say, big, huge hole, big gold star, just past these 2 boats ahead, duck them and tack into that spot versus trying to tack into this spot here. So again, trying to help the team out and assign that one person. Again, it's easy for the middle crew to do it because they're not really trimming anything. They don't really have a purpose other than calling time and helping out with position. Your bow person is going to be, your forward crew is going to be pretty focused on the distance to the line. And so I would designate or divide the responsibilities in that way. So here's another slide of holding your lane. And so our green guy that we've been talking about, who's been having good starts in these shots, didn't have a good start here. So what happened is he probably had a boat coming to leeward of him, and so he tried to close that gap, and he closed his hole with the boat to leeward of him and left this big gap to windward here. So we won't pick on him anymore. He's been having pretty good starts. But what was really cool to see is this white guy here, and he's got the state of New York to leeward of him as a runway. So really good start. And what he did was just match speed with the boat above and did his high kills to create that gap to leeward. And as all these guys start accelerating and putting bow down, he's got the whole world underneath him to accelerate and have a runway. This guy here was probably in line with these guys, but again, the execution was poor in matching or maintaining boat speed with the boats around him. And again, help your driver out, or as middle crew, help your driver out. Pay attention to what's going on with the boats above and below. And as soon as you see them starting to even inch centimeters forward on you, you need to start accelerating and trimming in and going so that this doesn't happen. So holding your lane here. So we all know it starts on your final approach. And we all know that managing your spot on the line on that final approach is really critical in order to be successful in holding your lane. So let's talk a little bit more about how to hold your lane after the start. So we're going to focus on more on sail trim, boat balance type stuff here. But it's really important to know that before you can hold a lane, or before you even attempt to try to hold a lane, you have to be at full speed, if not faster. If you're not at full speed, then your chances of holding that lane are going to be slim to none. Because what you're going to need to do is have the ability to press into the jib or sail slightly slower foot to get the boat to accelerate and get to full speed so that you can change those gears and get into a point mode and hold that lane. Holding your lane is all relative compared to the boats around you. So if you're faster than the boat to leeward of you, cash that in for a little bit more height to separate up off that boat to leeward of you. Because you never know when a left shift or right shift could come and you fall back down into that boat to leeward of you. So if you're faster than the boat to leeward, cash in those gains and sail extra a little higher to create more of a gap. If you're faster than the boat to windward of you, do the same. Put them away. Sail higher and faster. Again, that's easy, right? Sailing high and fast, it's real easy. But noticing that you're sailing faster, put the bow up and cash that in for some gains. Now, if you're sailing lower and slower, which is the worst case scenario, you need to be able to change gears and get the boat to reaccelerate. And so again, we're going to talk more about balance. So it's really important in that first, from 30 seconds to go in the starting sequence to the minute after the start goes off, that we're fully focused on balance. And it's really important to keep the boat as flat as possible when you're trying to accelerate. It's also really important to keep the boat as flat as possible when you're trying to point. Boats like to slip sideways when they're heeling. And it's pretty evident in the Lightning that any little bit of heel in the Lightning generates some weather helm, as you see in this photo here. You know, he's heeling 15 degrees or so. He's got a good bit of weather helm on. And the boat has slipping sideways a good bit here. And if you exit the starting line with this look, you're not going to be able to hold your lane at all. So it's really important that we focus on sailing the boat as flat as possible. One, in that lead up to the start so that we can get the boat to accelerate. And then after the start, sailing flat so that we're not sliding sideways. We're maximizing our lift with the boards forward, and we're minimizing how much we're slipping sideways. Now, a question is going to be, what if it's really windy and in order to get the boat super flat, I have to use all my sails out? That's fine. Set up with more twist. If it's really wavy and choppy, you know, set up with a lot of twist, but keep some depth in the sails to keep the power. Do whatever you have to do to keep the boat this flat exiting the starting line. That's going to give yourself the best chance of holding your lane. Now, it might seem odd that you're easing the sails so much that you feel like I'm never going to be able to point if my main's out this far, but you will be able to point because the boat's going to be flat and the boat's going to be going fast, and then you can generate that speed into lift. And then using the light spots to trim the main in a little bit more, keep the jib where it is. You can sail up a little higher maximize your gap, go back down, accelerate, keep playing or scalping your boat to windward. But, and I want to emphasize that from that 30 seconds before the start to the minute after the start or throughout the entire beat, focusing on balance is what is really critical to having the ability to hold your lane. Now, if you were this guy on the left and coming off the starting line with that look, what would be the fix? And I want to take this opportunity to throw some props out to Brian Hayes, a little advertisement for North Sails and Brian for doing the webinar a couple weeks ago on sail trim with Greg Fisher. And if you have the opportunity, if you haven't watched it yet, please do so. There's some great information on that about tuning and trim and setup and changing gears. But if you're this guy here, good bit of heel on, good bit of weather helm, the fix is more twist. So if you needed to hold a lane, we don't really want to drop the traveler too much, so that moves the leech too far from center line. So that's going to have a negative impact on our height, but we need to get the boat flatter. So we could try more backstay. Will definitely help keep the boat flatter without using the main too much. Or simply a little more vang on and use the main sheet out a bit, create more twist. But we need to do anything and everything we can to get the boat flatter. What I would do here is just simply put more backstay on. I need more outhaul tension, and then maybe ease the jib slightly to help relieve some of the pressure on the bow, relieve some of the tipping force, and let the boat sail a little flatter and higher. Here's a great aerial shot of a couple boats coming off the starting line. And we've all been in this boat's position before, where we have a boat tight to leeward that's going a little bit better than us, and we start to freak out. And what we do is we start pinching to try to hold that lane. And that's the worst thing that you could possibly do. And this is where it's really hard. And as a driver, I say this a lot, is as a driver, you got to put your blinders on. And you cannot look at that boat to leeward. And you just have to sail the boat as flat and as fast as possible. And as soon as you start to pinch, even for 1 or 2 seconds, the boat speed's going to drop, and then your chances of holding that lane are zero. You're going to lose that lane. And here in this photo here, this guy has already lost the lane. You see that he's pinching, his bow is up. He's going to hit a wave, he's going to hit a lull, the boat speed's really going to drop, and then he's going to have to tack away. What you really need to do, and what's really hard, is keep pressing on the jib. Even match angle or sail slightly lower than that boat to leeward and start sailing faster. If you generate that boat speed and start sailing faster, you're going to generate a little bit more lift, but you're also creating a little bit more momentum so that you can scallop up, kill some at speed, separate, come back down, reaccelerate, and you keep working up off of them when you're loaded up. Never slowing down, making sure that your sailing boat as flat as possible and as fast as possible, staying powered up but balanced. If we're sailing in overpowered conditions and we still want to stay somewhat powered up so we can hold the lane, and focusing on sailing the boat super flat, keeping the boat as balanced as possible, do whatever we need to do to achieve that. Here's some keys to holding a lane. And we kind of gone through this already, but some key points to highlight here is the faster you're going, the easier it's going to be. And so this starts, the process of holding your lane, like I said, starts at 30 seconds or 45 seconds before the starting gun goes off. We need to be matching speed or a little faster than the boats around us. And if we're going faster than the boats around us, we're going to have a pretty good chance of holding our lane once that starting gun goes off. And after that starting gun goes off, it's all about focusing on your boat balance, focusing on your trim, your heel angle, your crew positions. Pay very close attention to boat balance and heel angle. Stay powered up and be more aggressive with driving to control heel angle. So with driving, like we talked about before, we'll go back to this one slide. As a puff approaches, a puff coming here, as a puff approaches and the boat wants to heel, instead of using that puff to go forward or easing the main to control heel angle, you can simply put the bow up a little bit to get through that puff to control heel angle, but being very cautious and being ready to put the bow back down before that puff goes away so you don't lose speed. So that gives you a couple more seconds of holding that lane, and being aggressive in the puffs and doing that little scallop up can be really helpful. Now, the death or the worst part of that is when the lull comes behind the puff and you get stuck high, then you have a negative impact on boat speed. So it's really important to be aggressive, up in the puff, but then getting the bow back down before that lull comes. And even aiming at that boat to leeward slightly. I know you're going to have a fear of losing that lane, but your boat speed is more critical. As soon as you slow down, you're going to lose the lane. So do whatever you can to keep the boat sailing even speed, if not slightly faster than that boat's leeward. And then your chances of holding that lane are going to be greater, at least surviving in that lane. Last thing here is don't pinch. So again, we have this tendency that if we have a boat tight to leeward of us to really trim the main hard and try to pinch the boat up as high as we can to try to hold that lane. And all we're doing is slowing the boat down. And we cannot point if we're going slow. You need to be going at target speed, if not faster, to keep the boat sailing forward and lifting and going upwind. Now, I use the word target speed. I'm used to sailing bigger boats and boats with speedos and all that stuff, and we have sheets that tell us how fast we need to be going in certain conditions. We don't have that ability on Lightnings. It'd be pretty cool, it'd be pretty convenient to have that ability on the Lightning. But what is target speed on a Lightning? Well, target speed is your speed based on the boats around you. So you need to be going even speed, or if you can, slightly faster than the boats around you. As soon as you start to slow down, you need to make that observation, and having your crew give relative boat speed compared to the boats around you, relative angle compared to the boats around you. And we all want to hear it when we're doing good, and we never want to say it when we're doing bad, but it's really important and really critical that as soon as we start to see or feel that we're slightly lower or slightly slower than the two boats around us, we have to make a gear change. We have to make that adjustment so that we continue to sail the boat even speed, if not slightly faster than the boats around us. Grab a bit of water here. So here is the starting routine laid out here for you. So make your start plan based on your strategy. So where do you want to go? So that's going to give you a section of the starting line that you want to start in. So whether it's boat third, middle, pin third, finding that area, and then finding a low dense area to make your final approach. So when you make that tack from port to starboard, having half time to kill. So what that means is you're not going to be late, and that also gives you options or gives you the ability to maneuver compared to the boats around you. So you can work up off that boat to leeward of you. You can get really tight to that boat to windward of you. You can work on managing your boat speed with the boats around you and staying bow even or bow ahead of that boat around you. Kill time high is a great way of managing your speed, managing your time. If you're too fast and approaching the line too soon, you can kill time high. Simply let the jib luff and turn the boat towards head to wind, maximizing your gap left. If you're too early or you're too close to the line, killing time high is a great way. But again, you really need to have eyes out of the boat, looking for threats, anyone coming from port or any boats coming from leeward, and being ready to defend that spot. And you never want to get too slow. You know, we have a rule of thumb on J70s and bigger boats with speedos is that we never want to get below 2 knots of boat speed, because that's where we start to lose maneuverability. And once you get below 2 knots of boat speed, it's really hard to get the boat to accelerate again. So on the Lightning, you need to do that drill on your own, because you need to figure out how slow can you go before you start to lose the ability to control the bow, and how long is it going to take you to get back up to full speed. And then the last thing here is settle time, or that moment in time when we need to be racing. Figuring that out based on your time and distance. So how far away from the line are you? How long is it going to take you to get to the line? And when do I need to be trimmed in and racing? So I personally and any team that I'm sailing with, working for, coaching, I will recommend and we will do a bunch of practice starts. So our general routine, and again, I like to use the word routine, I like to have repetition, is get out to the sailing area early and go upwind, get your settings, tune with your tuning buddy, make sure that you guys are going okay, but then immediately get back to the starting line and start doing your research on the starting line. Do a couple practice starts, do 1, 2, or 3-minute practice starts to get you used to the conditions driving, get your team used to the conditions trimming, managing the boat with crew weight, making sure that you're flat when you accelerate, that everyone's moving around the way they need to be moving around. You got the communication flowing so that when it comes time to go to battle and that starting sequence begins, you have your routine developed. You have all the data you need to manage your start, to have a successful start. And then what it comes down to is just managing your boat speed compared to the boats around you. So that was my spiel on developing a starting approach and developing a routine for starting. I hope you guys found that helpful, and I encourage you guys to ask questions, to email me. My email address is here. So please, anytime, any questions are good. I won't turn you away. And if you guys just simply want to chat about sailing or anything else, get in touch with me. I'll get back. Be happy to chat. So it's in next week, I will be doing another talk on upwind strategy and tactics. So we've talked about starting, and we've talked about putting the boat onto the race course. And the next step, or where we want to take this, is that first beat. And we want to put together a good first beat. So we're going to talk about developing a strategy for that first beat and how we use tactics to execute that strategy and lead us to making better decisions on the water. And with that, I'm going to say adios. Thank you guys for coming.